The other thing I would say is I'll give you a quick exercise here that you can think about or anyone can think about. You don't have to use this exact language, but I think it's a helpful sort of brainstorming exercise. Two different ways. So, one is if you had to describe your show using two existing things that people know, doesn't have to be other shows, but it can be. And you're going to complete this sentence. So, this is kind of a Hollywood trick. Like you see this with movies all the time, right? I don't know if you remember like the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves like forever ago. The pitch for Speed was basically it's Die Hard on a bus. So in a sentence, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. So one way to do this is a cross. So you could go, my podcast is a cross between X and X. I'm making this up, but I'm trying to think of a good, this is far from perfect, but just off the top of my head, your podcast is a cross between How I Built This and the X Games. I don't know if you know the How I Built This podcast, but it's these extreme, and you're not really doing extreme athletes. It'd be more an adventurer thing, but it's a cross between How I Built This and Indiana Jones. Again, not a great example, but you see what I'm doing, right? When you say that, you're like, to someone casual, you give them those reference points and they're like, oh, I get it. If you reference two things that they know, that combination, suddenly they have a very clear picture of what the show is. And again, you can use that language or not, but it's a good sort of shorthand to connect with people. The other way to do it is so it's either a cross between X and X or X and Y, or it's X for Y. For my podcast, I'm going to use How I Built This again. You want to pick things that sort of people know, but most podcast listeners at least know of what How I Built This is or whatever, right? So I could say that my podcast is How I Built This for people who haven't built it yet. Now you at least get, oh, I get, okay, they're going to tell the stories about what they're building. And again, not a perfect thing because my show is different than, but that those trying to fill out those two sentences. And it's a good brainstorming because you can come up with a bunch of options for each. And it'll help you clarify how you even think about like what the show is by using references that people understand. And whether you actually use it in your show description or you just use it anecdotally when you talk to people, you will find that they instantly get it. It's rooted in things that they understand. And it forces you to really think about, well, what does make this unique?